Hey guys, before we start tonight's journey, take a moment to get settled. Find the most comfortable position for your body. Relax any areas that feel tense. Let your shoulders drop as you slowly unload the exhaustion you've been carrying all day. Tonight, we will follow a Victorian-era lady through a day in her mansion, from the chill before dawn, all the way until the last candle flickers out at night. There is nothing here you need to be on edge about. The rhythm of the story will rise and fall like breathing, gently guiding you towards sleep. If these quiet journeys help you rest, we warmly welcome you to follow this channel. That way, whenever you need it, there will be another night like tonight to keep you company. A simple like, or leaving a note below about where you're listening from tonight, will help others find these stories too. You don't have to rush any of it. You can wait until tomorrow morning or put it off forever. For now, none of it demands anything from you. Right now, there is only this, the warmth around you, the slowly settling darkness, and a long, gentle story waiting to begin. If your eyes feel tired, let them close slowly. Let your breathing slow down. When you're ready, we will step into a quiet, dim house while everyone else is still asleep. It is the autumn of 1860, just before dawn somewhere in the English countryside. The season is shifting toward Michaelmas, and the nights are growing longer. Outside the window, fields are dark and sullen. Inside a cosy mansion tucked away from a quiet lane, the rooms are cold and the fire in the fireplace has not yet been lit. This is the house where we will spend our day. We will follow the people moving through it, especially its lady of the house. You might imagine her as a leisurely woman, just a wealthy lady greeting visitors and choosing dresses. But spend some time with her and you will find a very different side. From the first cold hour of the morning until the faint glow of the last candle at night, every bit of life in this house quietly revolves around her. The fire in the hearth, the 3 daily meals, the shopping, the accounts, the servants and their work, guests outside the door, and the long dining table set for dinner. Nothing runs on its own. It all runs smoothly because she takes careful care of everything at every moment, yet never raises her voice even once. I want to take you through a very ordinary day in this kind of life. Not a grand day. Not a day when anything extraordinary happens. Just an ordinary day, from waking up to going to sleep, like thousands of days spent in countless homes just like this one. We will stay back and watch her quietly. We will see her come down the stairs before the house is awake, walk into the cold, move back and forth between the kitchen and the pantry, while the maids rub their sleepy eyes. We will watch her sitting before the accounts, checking line after line of tiny numbers. We will follow her into the quiet, later morning, then come back to the front door when the first visitors arrive. By evening, in the half hour before the guests descend the stairs, we will stand with her as the whole day seems to gather in those few minutes of waiting. A well-kept mansion gives a curious feeling. You may have felt it yourself when you walk into a home where everything's in its place. The warmth and order feels so natural, it seems to form by itself. But that is not by accident. Behind it, there is always a person who has worried over it all and never asked for thanks. Tonight, that person is the one we will keep company with. So let the seasons change, let the morning be cold, and let the house around her still be sleeping. Let yourself sink a little deeper into rest. Now, walk down the dim stairs with me and step into the very first morning of her day. At this moment, the room was very cold. It was not the kind of biting cold outside, but the still, settled cold of a room shut all night. The warmth from yesterday's fire had long since faded into the walls. If you stood at the foot of the stairs for a while, you could feel it on your face and the backs of your hands. The air was motionless and heavy. Somewhere a clock was ticking steadily and slowly. Outside the tightly closed shutters, the fields were still pitch dark. This was the eve of dawn. The whole house seemed to be holding its breath. This was the moment before a new day began. In such a house in the autumn of 1860, the day did not start by itself. If you listened closely, you would hear the first sign of its arrival. Somewhere downstairs, a door quietly opened. On the back stairs, a pair of feet moved carefully, careful not to wake the sleeping family. This was Bessie, the maid, the first person to get up and move in the sleeping house. She was very young and had experienced countless mornings like this, so much so that before her eyes fully opened, her hands already knew what to do. Holding a box of brushes and cloths and a bundle of kindling matches, she first went to the rooms the masters would use, where the fireplace still held only the cold ashes of last night. Have you ever watched someone who has done a thing 1,000 times light a fire? There is a certain quiet rhythm to it. She knelt before the cold hearth, raking out yesterday's ashes and gathering the coal dust that could still burn again. In this house nothing was wasted. She cleaned the fireplace grate, a slow and dirty task. She rubbed black lead over the grate's bars and polished them until the iron gave off a dull, dark glow. Every spot on the steel fire tongs and fireback was wiped clean. The hearthstones before the fireplace were scrubbed white again. After all this, her hands were covered in black. The job carried a particular smell too, the mix of soot, cold metal and old ash. She was not warm yet, neither was the room, but under her fingertips the first signs of warmth were being carefully laid out little by little. Next came the lighting of the fire, crumpled paper, a small nest of dry twigs, and carefully placed small lumps of coal, arranged to avoid smothering the flame before it bursts. She struck a match and brought it close to the paper. At first there was just a thin wisp of smoke and a faint flicker of light. Then the twigs caught fire, crackling softly, and a low light flickered and danced on the walls. She stayed kneeling a while longer, watching it, feeding it wood until she was sure the fire was going. Only then would she gather her things and move to the next cold room, leaving behind a trail of rising warmth in each. This girl kneeling and working in the dark deserves a moment of our attention. The comfort coming for the whole day ahead, the warm rooms, the hot water, breakfast set on the table, all of it began with her, before the family even turned over in bed. Later, those who would sit beside these fires would never think about how the fires were made. That is the point. A well-kept house hides all the hard work behind its comfort, showing only the comfort itself. While the fire was being lit, another small task was happening inside. Jugs of water were carried up the back stairs. In a house like this, there were no taps in the bedrooms. Every drop of water needed upstairs had to be heated downstairs and then carried up by hand, one jug at a time, to the washstands in each room, where marble tops held water jugs and basins. It was a hard, quiet and endless job. Like lighting fires, it went unnoticed. When the family woke up, the water was already there. As if it had always been. There was one fire we have not yet mentioned, and it was the most important of all. Deep in the kitchen downstairs, the huge stove had been lit, even earlier than anywhere else. Without exaggeration, this was the heart of the house. Almost everything depended on it. It heated the water carried upstairs, it cooked breakfast, and a few hours later it would power the entire evening meal. Before Bessie came down, a kitchen maid had already been in the cold to stoke the enormous grate, patiently bringing the fire to life, so that when the masters needed it, the flames were steady and the oven was hot. This was the first work started in the house, and the last to be put out at night. Everything else relied on its slow, enduring heat. Now, quietly returned to the main floor of the house, where a door has just opened. The lady of the house was awake. Her name was Mrs. Eleanor Hartley, and like every morning of her life, she rose early. You might think that in a house with enough servants to make fires and carry water, the lady could sleep in as much as she liked. Some ladies did. But Eleanor had long ago understood a truth, one that careful housewives of her time almost regarded as a rule. The character of a house depended on who got up first. If the lady rose late, the servants moved slower, and the whole day seemed behind before it began. But if she started moving before dawn, somehow the whole house woke with her. She never needed to say this to anyone. You could feel it quietly in the backstairs and kitchen. Everyone understood that the lady was awake. She appeared in the dim morning light, the small stove that belonged to her room just coming alive with flames. The washstand held water already. It was not hot water. In those years, many believed mornings should begin with cold water, or water just taken off the chill, thinking a sharp, brief shock was healthy to start the day. Whether true or not, one thing was certain. Nothing woke you up better before dawn than cold water on your skin. She did not linger washing up. In minutes, brisk and efficient, sleep was swept away. I've always thought there was a quiet kind of courage in this, a small, unshowy bravery. Every morning, rising in the dark house while cold and dark still held sway, asking for nothing back, and expecting no attention. It was the opposite of grandeur. An orderly life was built on this foundation. One early morning after another, stacking up like Bessie, piling little lumps of coal until the fire came to life. Now she began dressing, and the care she took was more than you might expect. She put on a plain gown, simple, neatly made, not showy, and without jewellery. This was not careless. The lady of this house used dress at different times of day as a tacit language, and the morning dress meant plainness. Jewellery and fine silks had their moments, but not now. Morning wear was for work, moving between kitchen, pantry, and household tasks. Wearing anything valuable while doing those things was foolish and vain. Everyone knew this well. Jewellery was only worn when the full evening dress was on, after the day's work had ended, and guests were expected. For now, plainness was itself appropriate. Her hairstyle was simple too, enough for a morning round without becoming untidy. There was no need yet for a maid to fuss over her hair. Those careful beautifying rituals belonged to the evening, when there was reason to have them. This was a working morning, and neatness was enough. There was a small mirror, a faint new light streaming through the window, and soft sounds of the house waking downstairs. A door, a bucket set down, the quiet beginnings of clatter in the kitchen. She seemed not to be paying special attention to these sounds, much like you might casually listen to familiar music playing in another room. Each noise told her something. Each said that the day was unfolding in its proper order, and so far all was as expected. Before going downstairs, she checked on the children. I will not linger here, for the nursery had its own quiet world and schedule. We follow the lady's life, not the children's, but checking the children in the morning was part of her routine. To see with her own eyes that the little ones were clean and warm, that the nursery fire was lit, and this corner of the house was as safe as any other. It took only a few minutes, a few words to the nurse, a soft pat on a small head, a glance around without stopping. Then she came out again and went downstairs. Now come down with her into the house that has already changed since we first stood in the dark. It was warming. The fires lit by Bessie had spread warmth through the rooms, and the cold stillness of night had lifted. There was light now, real morning light piercing through the folded shutters, pale and clear. And a smell that had not been there an hour before, that plain, tempting scent of breakfast in the making, the kettle, the toast, and the food that would soon be set on the morning table. The house that had held its breath was already quietly breathing. In the breakfast room the table was set and waiting, quietly ready. It was worth pausing here, for it held much silent care. There was a covered teapot or water jug, tea and coffee, each suited to the tastes within the family. There was a toast rack with fresh bread, butter, and a dish or two of jam. On sideboards there might be eggs, cold cuts, or a bit of pickled fish for those who wanted something beyond bread. This was no grand feast. Every part of it was made and placed with care by those who rose in the dark. In a well-run house, even the simplest breakfast was the result of a long string of small labours, each trace hidden by the time it reached the table. The first gathering of the day was fixed and regular. The family would arrive on time, sitting together, unless illness or urgent business kept someone away. There was comfort to this regularity that was easy to miss. No matter what the day might bring later, no matter how busy or difficult the hours ahead, it began here, at a known time around a familiar table, with everyone gathered briefly in a warm room. That order itself was kindness. Children raised in such a home learned without being told that the world was orderly and that order was strong. There is one more thing to note about this moment. In a way, it was the calmest stretch in the long day ahead. The rounds had not started. No orders were given. No visitors stood outside the door. The long evening with its many guests was still far away, well past morning and afternoon. In this short time the family could sit, eat a bit, chat casually, wrapped in the warm room. The day had not yet made demands on them. Eleanor knew better than anyone at the table how busy the next few hours would be. Maybe that was why she let breakfast keep this slow pace. It was the only quiet shore before the tide of the day surged in. Watch Eleanor walk in. The plainness of her morning dress, the steadiness of her steps, her eyes sweeping the room to check all was well. The fire burned bright. The table was set. The light came in. She had been awake for some time and had already handled more daily business than most at the table could imagine. But she was not rushed, nor did she look strained. She simply took her seat, and breakfast began. You must understand, this was only the beginning. The fires were lit, the family fed, and the morning's work was underway. But the lady's real duties for the day, inspections and orders, accounts and visitors, and the long preparation for evening, all these still waited for her. And now there were only warm rooms, pale light, and that quiet satisfaction a house feels when it moves safely from the cold dark of night into the familiar comfort of a new day. Before we go further, let us stay a little longer in this warmth. In the midst of this morning, when the house is fully awakened and is bustling with activity, a special kind of sound emerges. The sound is not loud, it is a low, busy hum, made up of many small noises intertwined together. Somewhere a broom sweeps the floor, water flows. One door closes, then another one follows. A frying pan makes a dull thud as it hits the stone floor. Footsteps shuffle back and forth from downstairs. If you stand quietly in the hallway and simply listen, you can hear how this entire house around you is being tended to by those invisible hands. This is also the moment when the lady of the house personally goes on her rounds. Now, leaving the bright front hall with her, we move toward the back of the house to the place where the real work happens. She carries a bunch of keys with her. You might have noticed they hang at her waist. This is worth thinking about because these are not just keys, they symbolise her authority and what falls under her management. They open the storeroom, the linen cupboard, and all the places where things are carefully kept within the house. Holding them means carrying the trust of the entire household. Many of the things we are about to see ultimately connect back to those small metal objects in the rooms they unlock. The first place she visits is the kitchen, and as we descend the air begins to change, it grows warmer. The smells of bread and meat, the scent of the fire, and the aromas of ingredients being cut and prepared all gather and deepen. There is a reason a kitchen in a house like this is far away from the family's rooms. The heat, noise and strong cooking smells are not meant to drift into the quiet sitting rooms where guests will be seated. The kitchen stays at one end of the house, its own warm and busy independent kingdom, ruled by its own laws. Stepping here from the cool silence of the front hall feels like entering a completely different house. It's worth understanding why the kitchen is placed where it is. It is no accident. A good kitchen's design is almost like a workshop carefully planned. It needs space, high ceilings and plenty of light, so the workers inside can see clearly and breathe easily during long and hot hours. Good ventilation is a must to clear away steam and heat. It needs easy access, yet must be far enough from family rooms to keep smells and clattering sounds from disturbing them. Most importantly, water and fuel must be close at hand to minimise steps during endless hooving and hauling throughout the day. All these considerations explain the simple fact of the kitchen's location. When Eleanor steps inside it, she enters a room built especially to meet the demands of its work, and it delivers. At the centre of the kitchen stands the huge stove, the fireplace we mentioned earlier. It burns steadily and fiercely now. The oven is warm and the stovetop crowded with pots and pans. The one who rules over it all is the cook. Her name is Mrs. Dunmore. She has never been married, yet people still call her Mrs., as good cooks always are. It is a title of respect earned through skill and status. No one in this house would dream of calling her anything else. This kitchen is her domain. Within these four walls, her voice carries almost as much weight as the lady of the house's. Watching how these two women meet is a mix of politeness and a clear established order. Eleanor comes to check whether the morning's work has been done properly, and Mrs. Dunmore is ready to show her everything's in place. Together they inspect what's prepared, the fresh supplies delivered this morning, and what will be needed for the meals ahead. There is no fuss, no flattery, no harshness. These are two professionals making sure their work fits together perfectly. I find that watching people who are good at their jobs brings a sense of reassurance. Mrs. Dunmore has cooked thousands of dinners. Eleanor has arranged just as many meals. There's no need for long explanations or anxious questions between them. A glance, a word, a slight nod that settles everything. This is how a well-run household looks. The wheels are worn smooth. Everything runs quietly, without any harsh grinding noises. Next comes the heart of the morning's business, the issuing of the day's instructions. This is the moment when plans for the coming hours are made. What will be eaten and when, what must be purchased and what is already in stock, who will do which tasks. Eleanor keeps everything orderly, as servants bring her questions from their departments. Something is missing in the storeroom. A decision on dinner needs to be made. A minor problem appears that only she can solve. She listens to each question, gives answers, then moves on. By the end, everyone in the house knows what is expected of them today. This is when those keys come into play. Some needed items have to be fetched from the storeroom, which is kept locked. Tea, sugar, spices, jam, candles. Small, valuable items that are easy to waste or steal. They are never left lying around casually. They are handed out in measured amounts by the lady herself or under her watchful eye, according to the day's needs. This careful keeping of household supplies might sound stingy. People don't think so. They see it as simple good management, the kind of cautious care a wise person shows toward anything precious and limited. Wastefulness is the real fault. Careful budgeting is a virtue. There is an old house rule. Every item should have its own place and always be kept there. This could easily be dismissed as a dull motto, something embroidered on a sampler and hung on the wall. But in this house, on this ordinary morning, you see it alive. Keys hang on their rings, supplies sit on shelves, each in an own spot. Linens are folded neatly in cupboards, tasks are assigned, and each has a fitting person responsible for it. Here, order is not decoration. It is what lets such a large household run day after day with very little friction, and no one seems weighed down by it. We've already met the cook who rules the kitchen. There is also another figure whose work threads through everything we have seen, and now we should turn our attention to her. Her name is Mrs. Pemberton, the housekeeper. If the lady of the house stands at the top of the family pyramid, then the housekeeper is second in command. Her position is just below the ladies, acting on her behalf in hundreds of small matters. Wherever Eleanor is not, Mrs. Pemberton is there. Where Eleanor's eyes cannot reach, Mrs. Pemberton sees. She moves through the house all day, checking that everything is done well and thoroughly, that the servants below her are working, and that nothing is missed or overlooked. The lady decides the direction. The housekeeper makes sure that it is carried out. This role demands a certain kind of person. A good housekeeper must be absolutely honest, because a huge amount of supplies pass through her hands. She must be organised, punctual and steady. Everyone under her uses her as their standard. If she is meticulous, they will be meticulous. If she is careless, that carelessness will spread like water flowing down. She manages her department's accounts with the same attention to detail that the lady uses for the whole house. She knows where everything is and how much it costs. In her domain, she is almost like a lady herself. Downstairs lies a whole other world, one the family upstairs rarely sees, and the housekeeper stands near the centre of it. In a house this size, the servants aren't just one undifferentiated group. They have their own ranks and order, which in some ways is as strict as any drawing room. At the top are senior servants, and the housekeeper is one of their leaders. She does not dine with the maids or kitchen staff in the servants' hall. She has her own room, the housekeeper's room, where the higher servants gather. Ladies' maids, the butler, male servants, all eating breakfast and drinking tea, served by a young pantry maid. It's a quieter, more distinguished table than the bustling servants' hall downstairs, and gaining a place here takes effort and merit. A girl from a humble background, if she is clever and steady, can climb over years to reach that room and earn its status. The household has its own ladder, and everyone clearly knows their rung. Watching Eleanor and Mrs. Pemberton together shows how authority flows in this kind of house. It is not about loud shouting and obedience. It is quieter than that, and yet more powerful. The two women discuss the day ahead with short, clear words. Decisions made here. Arrangements set there. A note that a certain servant needs watching or a task must be finished this week. Then Mrs. Pemberton goes to carry it all out. As she leaves, she takes a part of the ladies' authority with her. Their trust is the hinge on which the whole household turns. Leaving the kitchen and storeroom, the rounds continue to other work areas of the house, and there is more to check than you might imagine. One room holds linens for the home. In a house this size, this is no small matter. Bedsheets, tablecloths, napkins, towels, all must be kept in good condition, mended before they wear too thin or retired when their time comes. On certain days, the linen cupboard is opened and every piece checked one by one so nothing is overlooked or allowed to deteriorate by neglect. There is an old practical trick. When the middle of a bedsheet starts to wear thin, it can be cut and the strong edges turned inward, so it can last much longer. This kind of thrift is not stinginess. It is respect for the labour and money that the linens represent. There is also the pantry, a quiet and rather old-fashioned corner of the house. Its name comes from an earlier time when the still that named it was still in use, distilling scented waters for the kitchen and washrooms and brewing tonic drinks during illness. Many of those functions have now ceased, but the pantry keeps its place, where finer work is done, jams and sweets, delicate items needing careful handling requiring a clean separate space, far from the heat and noise of the big kitchen. The pantry maid tends the fire, keeps the room clean, and learns much by shadowing the housekeeper, gaining knowledge that might help her rise in the household someday. It is a small room but full of hope. More than one careful girl has started her climb in life right here. The rounds also cover another sphere, overseen by a man rather than a woman. The butler holds the opposite side of household order, managing the dining room and everything connected to it. Cutlery is his responsibility. The silver forks, spoons, serving dishes, candlesticks, all counted, polished, and carefully locked away just as the housekeeper protects her storeroom. The wine is his too, kept in the cold, dark cellar and brought up only when needed. His pantry is a small fortress for valuable goods. Like the housekeeper, he must be impeccable, holding many precious items under lock and key. When Eleanor's rounds draw near his domain, they meet briefly and politely, two experts quietly confirming all is well. The silver gleams, the count is right, everything is in order. Elsewhere, furniture is being dusted and polished, floors swept, brass and silver cleaned. These tasks each have their proper owners, and everyone knows their part. The junior maids have theirs, the pantry maid hers, the male servants theirs as well. As Eleanor passes by, she sees all this work well underway. Her merely seeing it is part of making sure it gets done. A house the lady personally inspects is one without forgotten corners, not because she shouts, but because she notices, and being noticed is enough. Watching all this, a thought keeps humming in my mind. We often think the important things in life are the grand, visible events, the banquets, balls and big occasions, but the truest measure of a house like this isn't its grand nights. It is the ordinary mornings. It is whether on a regular autumn Tuesday, with no one paying attention and nothing special to mark the day, the fires are still lit, the linen still mended, the supplies still counted, and the work still done well. Anyone can handle a big event. But faithfully keeping up the small things year after year is the harder and rarer achievement. By now, the rounds are nearly over. Instructions have been given, problems have been solved, supplies distributed, linens checked, and the day's work steadily running in every corner of the house. Eleanor has been on her feet the whole time, moving from room to room. If you look at her face, you see neither fatigue nor burden. Instead, There is a quiet satisfaction that comes from examining what belongs to you and finding it well kept. The kitchen is busy. The housekeeper is dutiful. Every servant knows their day's plan. The house is orderly. From the warm bustle of the kitchen to the cool neatness of the linen cupboard, she has seen it all with her own eyes. Now she can leave. The morning supervision is done, and for the next few hours the house will run on its own strength. She turns back to the front of the house, heading toward the quieter rooms, toward her own calmer morning. Behind her, the house continues to hum, tended with warmth and care, every item in its place, everyone at their post, all held within a deep, quiet order that comes from being truly valued and carefully looked after. On a small writing desk by the window, there was an open book with a pen resting beside it. This book was nothing special. It was plain and practical, divided into neat columns, and its pages had slowly been filled day by day with tiny amounts of money. This was a household ledger, one of the most unassuming yet most important items in the entire house. Every penny of household expenses was recorded on it in ink. Opening its pages was like reading the daily life of this place through numbers. Bread and meat, candles and coal, and the hundreds of small expenses that kept the family fed and clothed. In the quiet moments of the late morning, after the rounds were done and the house could run smoothly without her, take a seat with Eleanor in front of the ledger. She kept a strict habit. No matter how small the amount paid, every expense was recorded on the day it was spent. Not remembered some days later, not guessed afterward, but written down immediately and correctly, like keeping a daily diary of spending. A few pence here, a shilling or two there, all clearly written exactly where they belonged. It seems like an insignificant discipline, almost a fuss, but everything that followed depended on it. Think about why these tiny expenses mattered. Large payments were easy to track. A big sum was effortless to remember. It was those small pennies and half shillings that slipped away, the bits spent and then forgotten, and these small amounts, when added up over a month or a year, eventually became a real pile of money. The whole art of this ledger was in refusing to let small things disappear. As the saying goes, even the smallest sum must be recorded, while big expenses will take care of themselves. In a house like this, one major category of expenses had to be prioritised by the ledger, not meat or coal, but people. Servants' wages were among the largest and most fixed household costs, and it's worth pausing to understand them. They give you a general picture of this little world. By our standards, these amounts seem incredibly small. A good cook might earn £20 to £40 a year, a housekeeper about the same, or a bit more. A lady's maid might earn about £12 to £25, a male servant in uniform would be around £20. Younger maids earned far less. The lowest paid scullery maid might get as little as £5 or £6 a year, yet she did the hardest, dirtiest work in the house. In addition to wages, board and lodging was included, usually with extra tea, sugar and beer, because the coins they earned were never the whole story. Still, compared to their labour, it was little money and long hours. The number of servants a household could hire was plainly and almost arithmetically determined by the income that kept the house running. There was an unspoken hierarchy between families. A family with £1,000 a year might hire a cook, a senior maid, a junior maid, a nurse and a male servant. If income dropped to £750, the male servant would be more of a footman. At £500, the household shrank to a cook, one maid and a nurse. If income dropped further, it boiled down to one hard-working general maid doing almost everything, maybe with an occasional girl to help. The household's size, comfort, even the number of people working inside, all depended on those numbers in the ledger. Hiring more servants than income could afford was the surest path to bankruptcy, and a sensible mistress always knew exactly where her household stood on that scale. Now, flip the pages to the month's end, and you'll see what all this careful daily accounting was for. At the end of the month, all the scattered payment records were gathered and sorted. Each item was placed under its proper heading. How much was paid to the butcher, the baker, the grocer, the candle maker, and other suppliers? When those numbers were entered into their columns, Things hidden in the daily petty records came to light, the real state of household expenses. Eleanor could clearly see where the money flowed. She could compare this month with the last to find where costs rose. The butcher's bill being more expensive than usual was no longer a vague worry. It became a number she could check, track, and understand. The ledger had to be balanced at least once a month. This was the quiet moment of truth in the whole task. The recorded expenses had to match the actual money taken out of the purse. The records and the reality had to align. When they did, it brought a particular quiet satisfaction. The sense of accounts balanced. Proof of honesty down to the last penny. It was a simple but profound joy. There was order here, an order you could trust because it had been tested. I think in our time half of us have forgotten how reassuring it is to keep accounts, to know exactly where you stand, not guessing, not hoping, not avoiding, but putting everything down on paper. As the old saying goes, those who spend more than everyone else are never truly rich, and those whose income slightly exceeds their needs are not truly poor. The ledger stands for this truth. It is not about showing off. It is about clarity. Now, let's follow the other half of these expenses and step out of this quiet room into the world where the money actually goes. Goods do not deliver themselves. They must be chosen and bought. And buying is an art. In a house like this, much of the shopping fell to the mistress of the house or to the trusted housekeeper on her behalf. This was not a task you could hand over to just anyone. Buying well was harder than it looked, and buying poorly meant wasting money twice, once in paying too much, once in getting bad goods. So step outside into the village's main street. We can call this small place Maybury, and the shops here were the ones this household had patronised for years. There was the butcher, the baker, the grocer with drawers full of tea and pyramids of sugar, and other shops. A careful housekeeper almost lived by a rule. It sounds odd, but when you think about it, it's right. The best goods are ultimately the cheapest. Good meat that gives nutrition without waste is worth more than cheap, poor quality meat bought just to save a few pennies. Quality itself is a form of economy. Understanding this and putting it into practice was half the art of buying. The other half was knowing your tradespeople. A mistress new to a place, maybe a young wife just setting up her household, would not at first know whom to trust. But it took time. She would learn which butcher offered the best meat and fairest deals, which grocer was dependable, which shops were worth visiting and which to avoid. These were not small matters. A well-chosen and long-term tradesman became almost part of the household order, a person known and relied upon year after year. There was a relationship built slowly on mutual fairness between buyer and seller. Imagine her in the shop on this autumn morning. The pleasant smells, the butcher in apron, neatly displayed goods, the waiting scales. The produce reflected the changing season, because autumn brought its own harvest. Game in season, the orchard's last fruits, and root vegetables and apples stored up for cold months. The calm conversation was half business, half village gossip, and knew what she came for and could spot good from bad at a glance. She chose, asked, and bargained with a calm competence that only came from doing it hundreds of times. By evening, everything she bought here would become a line in that plain ledger by the window. Back inside, there was one more account to settle, and it was not hers alone. In households with a housekeeper, the mistress did not carry the entire burden of expenses herself. Mrs. Pemberton also kept her own carefully maintained accounts, covering every sum she handled. These accounts were not hers alone once written. She regularly submitted them to the mistress for review. This was not out of suspicion. It was just how a well-managed home ran. A good housekeeper was happy to do this because it gave her a chance to show she managed her department honestly and efficiently. There was a saying, accounts checked often keep friendships long, and that applied between mistress and housekeeper too. Regularly sharing accounts left no room for doubt, and their trust remained pure. When checking accounts, there was one clever habit worth mentioning. Mrs. Pemberton would note every item that entered the house without immediate payment. Then, when the tradesman's bill came, she could compare her notes with his invoice. If they matched, all was well. If not, they could find and fix discrepancies before arguments or losses arose. This also had a subtler use. By watching how much of each item the house used month to month, she could tell the normal usage. If in 1 month something went far beyond normal, she'd spot it and ask a simple question. Where did it go? Was it wasted, lost by accident, or something worse? The ledger was not just a record, it was a warning written in ink. There were also rules passed down from careful housekeeper to careful housekeeper to keep the home on secure ground. One of these was that rent should never exceed 1/8 of all the income available to pay for rent. Spending more than that on the house meant everything below it became strained and tight. This was a rough rule. Life did not always allow it, but it pointed to real wisdom. Don't let any one huge expense grow so big that it robs everything else. There was also a constant caution about debt. The wise way was to pay as you went, using cash whenever possible, and settle tradesmen's bills as soon as they arrived. Letting one bill linger, then another, was often how comfortable households quietly slipped into trouble. A long unpaid bill was a burden quietly growing in the dark. Mistresses who kept faithful records and paid when due never woke in the night with that special fear. Their accounts were well kept, and their nights were peaceful. Let us end with the spirit that runs through it all, because without that spirit, the numbers are just numbers. People are quick to mistake all this careful accounting as mere greed or stinginess born of anxiety. That's not so. A good housekeeper knows the difference better than anyone. Thrift is considered a household virtue, one of the quiet virtues that a family's peace depends on. But it has a neighbour it must never cross: stinginess. Managing small sums well, making a little money go far to live comfortably with no waste, is a true and admirable skill, in some ways wiser than simply spending large sums. But if one becomes greedy, complaining and miserly in the name of saving, squeezing all joy out of the house, that is no virtue at all. The line between the two is subtle, and a wise mistress treads it carefully. So slowly, with honest handwriting, the ledger by the window filled up. Every penny recorded, summed and balanced each month. Fair dealing with every tradesman and fair payment. This was the part of her life no one would remember, praise, or even see. It was the quiet foundation beneath all else, the simple arithmetic of comfort faithfully kept so that all the warmth on top could continue without disruption. In the calm of this late morning, rest here a while and watch those numbers add up into inner peace. At the halfway point of the day, a gentle pause appears. It is like a quiet little island nestled between the morning's work and the afternoon's labour. The hardest part of the morning is now behind her. The rounds have been made, the orders given, and the accounts handled. For a brief moment, there is nothing urgent pressing. The latter half of the morning reveals a rare side of this busy life, a period that could be said to belong entirely to her. Sunshine floods the room. The house operates itself around her, no longer needing her attention. She can enjoy an hour filled with gentler things. Sit quietly in this calm moment and see what she might do with this time. By her chair rests a sewing basket filled with needles and thread, because light sewing is one of the most common companions to a lady's leisure hours. On the side table there might be a half-finished book. In the next room there could be a piano, inviting a half hour of playing, or a canvas for a bit of painting, or, if the weather is fine, tending the garden for a little while. None of these are wastes of time, though harsh eyes might say so. Even back then, people understood that a mind worn down by duty needs rest, just like a blade needs sharpening. Endless toil dulls and weighs the spirit, making it harder to do things well. Enjoying a bit of leisure guilt-free helps keep the mind sharp for other tasks, so she reads, sews or plays the piano, and afterward she becomes better. I find a quiet wisdom in this old idea, one worth remembering. Today we tend to think every hour must be useful, packed full and productive. But the people in this household understood that rest is not the enemy of work. It is part of work. A garden tended purely for pleasure, a book read with no aim but enjoyment, a half hour at the piano, these do not take away from a useful life. They make the useful life bearable, and in the end, make it possible. During this peaceful time, sewing is not just for entertainment. Much of it is practical and obvious. The lady of the house might spend part of the quiet morning checking clothes, seeing what is worn out and needs mending, what must be remade. In a thrifty household, many things are made and repaired at home rather than bought, for fabric is costly, and a skilled needle can save a good deal over a year. The same careful budgeting that governs the ledger applies here. Turning a collar, letting down a hem, patiently altering what can still be used. A woman with fewer means might spend most of her day on such work, keeping her family dressed neatly and economically. For Eleanor it is easier, just part of her morning, not the whole. But the principle is the same. That needle is rarely idle for long. This quiet part of the day, like all the time in it, ends with a meal. Lunch is much simpler than the grand dinner that awaits at the end of the day. It sits in the middle as a small bridge linking the early breakfast to the late supper. A healthy body at work through such a long day needs to eat more than twice. It need not be elaborate. Usually it is just some cold dishes from the pantry, a bit of yesterday's leftover meat, some bread, simple and ready-made. Around the same time, other dining tables in the house are set. The servants are now eating downstairs in the hall. The children eat in the nursery. The whole house pauses, and with everyone eating in their own rooms, the long afternoon officially begins. This next stretch of time belongs more than any other to the outside world. It is visiting time. Here we find a little puzzle that tells us something about that era. These afternoon visits were called morning visits, even though almost none happened in the morning. In that world sense, the morning stretched long past noon, lasting until the start of the lavish dinner. By their count, a visit at 3 o'clock in the afternoon was still a morning visit, and everyone understood that tacitly. This small oddity reveals how the past divided their days in a different way than we do. These visits were not aimless wandering from one house to another. They formed a careful and widely understood system, a thread that kept society running, divided into 3 distinct types. The first kind is the formal visit. It is the most official of the 3, governed by the strictest rules and also the least intimate. It was obligatory on certain fixed occasions, for example, after dining at a friend's house or attending one of their gatherings. It was a way to repay a small social debt, a ritual way of saying, "Thank you, I acknowledge you, we are on good terms." This visit should be brief, 15 minutes, maybe 20, but no longer. One must not settle in. Even attire had rules. A lady attending such a visit might loosen her scarf, but her shawl and hat stayed on, a silent signal that she would not linger, that this was a visit, not a stay. People calculated these formal visits carefully, almost like the morning ledger, but tracking favours, not money. Who had been visited? If returning a call, how quickly was it done? The timing carried meaning. A quick return visit showed welcome. A slow one gently but clearly suggested perhaps no further visits were needed. The entire conversation happened via cards and visits, without a single blunt word spoken. Dressing for these afternoon visits also followed its own wisdom. Surprisingly unlike what you might expect, the rule was better to be somewhat plain than too fancy. Wearing something too elegant, almost evening gown level, was a small mistake, seeming too deliberate, throwing off the whole affair a little. Neat, decent, appropriate for the time, this was enough. This timeless taste was about not upstaging the occasion, not overdoing it, better to be quietly correct than dazzling. Now, let's shift perspective. Instead of going out visiting, we stay in the parlour to receive a visitor. The carriage stops or footsteps approach on the path. A bell rings, a name announced outside the door. A visitor arrives, say, Mrs. Caldwell, a neighbour dropping in for a friendly afternoon call. The room immediately prepares to receive her. If Eleanor was at the piano, the music ceases. If she was reading, the book is set aside. To continue these tasks with the guest sitting nearby would be a small discourtesy. But there is one widely allowed gentle exception. The lady may continue some light sewing during the conversation, especially if the visit lasts. The hands can stay busy while talking. This is not rude. Watch how Eleanor welcomes her. In older, more rigid times, a lady of the house would rise to escort the guest formally to the door when leaving. By this later time, social customs had loosened somewhat, shedding some of their heaviness. Now she stands, warmly greets the visitor, shakes hands or makes a slight curtsy depending on their closeness. At the end of the visit, she stands again to say goodbye and rings a bell so a servant comes to see the guest out. This is simpler than the old formality, yet no colder. Within such visits, the conversation also follows gentle rules. The mood should be light and cheerful. Topics should be easy, things you can pick up and drop without weight. No heavy or argumentative subjects. Serious disputes, sharp opinions, judgments of others, all are kept out of the parlour. Afternoon visits are not for debating tough or serious issues. They exist for the pleasant surface of things, for warmth without tension, for the steady kindness between neighbours. There is an art to keeping conversation friendly and carefree, and that is harder than it sounds. Among these softer unwritten rules is one about what visitors bring, or more precisely, what they don't bring. It is best to leave beloved dogs at home because not everyone likes pets bounding around a guest room, and wagging tails might knock over fragile objects. Likewise, unless children are extraordinarily well behaved and the family is very close, children usually do not come on afternoon visits. Visiting is an adult activity and should remain so. These are not harsh restrictions, but small courtesies to save everyone minor troubles. Ultimately, this is a large part of what good manners mean. There is a third kind of visit, the gentlest of all, a condolence call visiting a family struck by loss. This is the subtlest social duty, with its own quiet etiquette. These visits should be made as soon as possible, within a week of the sad event, so that sympathy arrives while still needed, and not too late to comfort. Visitors dress in sombre black or plain dark clothes. This polite attire silently says, "I share your grief and come bearing it," not as one among the usual. The manner is restrained, voice low, words gentle and brief. One comes to sit quietly beside the sorrow, to let them feel they are not alone, then to leave quietly. I think even today, when many such forms have fallen away, there is still something to learn in this cautious etiquette. We sometimes see manners as the enemy of heartfelt feeling, as cold and empty performance. But look at how they work in times of mourning, and you see the opposite. Form gives people a way to express empathy, a vessel for it, a container for feelings that might spill awkwardly or become inexpressible otherwise. Dark clothing, early visits, soft, simple words, these are not substitutes for feeling. They embody feeling itself, given a form where it can be safely expressed. Sometimes form is exactly how the heart finds its way to act. There is one last small custom worth noting, showing the most delicate side of these gentle rules. That is the matter of calling cards and the phrase "not at home." When a visitor arrives, but the lady of the house cannot or does not wish to receive her, the servant simply says she is not at home. Everyone understands this may be true in the literal sense or not. The lady might really have gone out, or she might be inside, but inconvenient to see anyone just then. The only polite and well-bred response is to accept this phrase exactly as said and to ask no further questions. Whatever one privately thinks "not at home" is taken as a simple and final fact. Leave a card and go. No hints, no prying, no hurt feelings. The visitor leaves a card saying she came and thought of them. That is enough. This polite little untruth seems trivial, but folded inside is real kindness. It provides everyone a way to refuse and be refused without harm. No one is rejected harshly at the door. No one has to hear an unkind truth. The phrase "not at home" is a soft cushion between people, letting daily social friction pass without anyone hurt. The entire polite society rests on such gentle tacit understanding, followed by all, questioned by none. If "not at home" is this world's soft cushion, then the visiting card is its circulating coin. Much of this system runs on those little paper slips with names, passed hand to hand, left on hallway tables, collected, counted, and remembered. Leaving a card is the simplest currency of politeness, saying, "I came, I remember you, I honour my place in this order." Using this coin also follows careful rules as strict as any in the ledgers. Consider how a stranger first steps into this social web. When a family moves into a neighbourhood and settles down, they do not go straight to knock on neighbours' doors. The proper way is to wait. An established household visits first to open the door of acquaintance. Only after this first call may the newcomers return the visit, and slowly begin building neighbourly relationships. This way of waiting to be sought may seem backwards now, but it spares everyone the awkwardness of unwelcome advances, allowing both parties to calmly choose whom they wish to know. Sometimes this process is smoothed by a letter of introduction from a mutual friend. Even in this letter's delivery there is elegance. The writer hands it to the messenger unsealed, so the sender can see how warmly their friend speaks of the recipient. Sealing the letter would be a slight breach of etiquette, implying hidden things. The recipient of such a letter is duty-bound to act quickly and warmly, visit, welcome, and offer as much help as possible to the friend's recommended newcomer. A chain of trust flows through these letters from friend to friend, bridging strangers into close connection. When visiting a new friend for the first time, a lady leaves her own card and that of her husband, whose work often keeps him from visiting personally. When ultimately leaving a neighbourhood for good, there is a final, quite touching little card ritual. The leaver will leave or send a card marked in one corner with 3 small lowercase letters. They stand for a French phrase meaning simply goodbye, the farewell paid in the quiet currency of every greeting. The whole friendship, from the first visit to the last, can be traced by those small white slips coming and going, like leaves floating on a calm stream. As the long afternoon of visit wears on, one after another, card after card, quiet weaving and reweaving binds together the threads holding the community close. When the final visitor departs and the light begins to stretch toward evening, a great deal of invisible work is done. Social debts are paid, friendships maintained, sympathy sent where needed. This work is neither grand nor noisy, but carried out with the same patience and care as kindling a fire or keeping accounts. It is part of the lady of the house's daily duties. Through these gentle visits, she upholds the family's good name in the world. Stay a while longer in the warm parlour as the afternoon fades gently toward dusk. As daytime slowly faded away, the entire manor began to transform. All afternoon this place had been a busy and humble workspace. Now, as night descended beyond the windows, it started dressing up for the evening just like its mistress. People lit candles and carried them into every room, casting a warmer, softer glow that chased away the pale light of the dying day. In the dining room, the long table was quietly being set by servants. The white tablecloth was smoothed out flawlessly, silverware carefully arranged and reflecting the flickering candlelight, and the glasses stood in place like soldiers lined up. The butler supervised everything. This was his moment, much like the housekeeper's inspection in the morning. The silver had been counted and polished to a shine. The chosen wines were brought quietly from the cool cellar nearby, waiting patiently. Every knife, fork, spoon and chopstick was placed in the correct order, and every glass had its own spot. Nothing was missed, and nothing was out of place. The manor seemed to take a deep breath, settling down from the day's labours and shifting into evening elegance. There would be esteemed guests tonight, so everything had to be flawless. Let's step into the lady's boudoir, where the most dramatic transformation was happening. That morning we saw her dressed simply, wearing a plain long dress without any adornment. Now we witness the exact opposite, and finally understand why the morning needed to be so unassuming. The modest morning look existed only as a backdrop to highlight the luxury of the evening. The exquisite evening gown was taken out. The silk that had waited all day was finally ready for its moment. Even now, only now, were the jewels removed from their boxes, treasures she would never wear in the storeroom or kitchen. The whole story told by her attire had flipped. The busy daytime was over, and the elegant evening had arrived. Her clothes announced this moment. She did not do this alone. This moment belonged to her lady's maid, whose entire skill went into the mistress's appearance and dress. Her name was Lottie, and she was highly skilled. It was she who helped fasten the intricate clasps of the evening gown. With care impossible during the busy day, styled the hair with patience and prepared the jewellery and smoothed the gloves. Real craftsmanship was involved here, knowing what was appropriate and what complemented, plus nimble, delicate hands. While others in the manor cooked, cleaned and moved things about, Lottie's work waited for this critical hour. Her mistress had to be ready at precisely this moment to greet the most scrutinising social world. The transformation itself was worth pausing for, carrying an almost ritualistic quality. Hair that was simply tied back for convenience in the day was now patiently styled into a more complex design under Lottie's skillful fingers, smoothed, shaped and decorated. The evening gown needed assistance to put on. Its buttonholes could not be reached by one hand alone. Jewellery was lifted from dark velvet cushions and fastened at the neck, wrists and earlobes, sparkling with small lights that daytime work could not allow. Pale gloves were pulled on slowly. In front of the tall mirror, in candlelight, a different woman seemed to emerge. She was Eleanor, who had bent over ledgers, making rounds on cold mornings, now dressed up, elegant and composed, ready. It was the same person, though with many faces throughout the day, this last one the most polished and perfect. While she was being dressed, let's think about the guests about to arrive, for whom the mistress had poured out great care. Invitations had gone out as early as 2 to 3 weeks ago. Last-minute invitations would be rude. The invitations followed a fixed yet refined format, not written in a personal letter style but in the third person, as if describing the event from a polite distance. The hosts sent their greetings to friends and kindly requested or hoped for their presence at dinner. In the corner of the invitation was a few letters, an abbreviation of a French phrase simply requesting a reply. Please let us know if you will come. Recipients were obliged to respond quickly in the same elegant third-person style, either gladly accepting or politely declining. The whole process carried a solemn rhythm, a tiny dance of courtesy and response that played out even before the guests set foot outside their homes. Choosing who to invite was an art in itself. Simply inviting those one liked was not enough. The guests had to get along with each other. A successful dinner was like a carefully blended dish. The table needed talkers as well as listeners. A table full of only listeners would fall silent, while one with only talkers could become a battlefield. There needed to be a dignified presence as well as a lively spirit. The lively ones set the mood, and the serious ones added weight. The hostess, knowing this, chose guests like a gardener planting certain plants next to each other, valuing how they looked together and whether they resonated. Even the right number of guests followed a tradition. An old saying went that the number should be no fewer than the 3 graces, and no more than the 9 muses, that is, between 3 and 9. Fewer than 3, conversation could not spread. More than 9, a single long table would split into scattered groups, losing unity. Gatherings of 10 to 12 were considered the ideal size, lively yet small enough to remain whole. Seating arrangements were also planned in advance, never thrown together haphazardly at the door. Guest names were neatly and correctly written on small cards placed at their designated seats. So the question of who should sit next to whom was settled calmly beforehand, avoiding confusion in that awkward first moment. Every detail was thoughtfully considered, so when night came everything fell into place smoothly, effortlessly. And effortless was the greatest art of all, born of countless silent efforts. The seating plan also held an unspoken order of seniority and respect. The lady the host wished to honour most, whether because of age, status or unfamiliarity, sat on his right. Other guests were arranged similarly by gentle consideration of rank and circumstance, so no one was overlooked, and all sat in the rightful place of courtesy. It sounded complicated, and it was, but it spared every guest the tiny anxiety of not knowing where to sit. They could simply take their carefully assigned place and enjoy the evening. Now we have arrived at the moment, half an hour before dinner. It is also the most delicate and hardest stretch in the long day. Let me take you closer to her than we have been all day. For this brief moment, Leave your role as observer and step into her situation. In the last half hour before guests go downstairs, play the role of the hostess. You are now dressed and ready. The sitting room is warm and bright, quietly waiting. You have no choice but to wait inside, that is the hardest part. Nothing is under your control anymore, yet everything remains your responsibility. In the kitchen downstairs, the dinner is at its critical stage, and you must trust your cooks to get it right. Trust the soup will be hot, the main course cooked perfectly, and the lengthy meal served in order. You cannot go down to check, you can only trust. Will the guests arrive on time? If someone is late, dinner will spoil in waiting and the mood at the table will turn tense. You listen but pretend not to hear the sounds of carriages on the driveway. Notice how slowly time passes. Somewhere in the room a clock ticks. You sense it more clearly now than ever before. His dry, faint ticking measures the suspense. Candles burn steadily. The fire in the hearth settles. Every small noise from the hall makes your heart jump with hope that it is the first guest arriving, not some mishap downstairs. This half hour has dashed many a hostess's hopes. Within it, a day's preparations either bloom or collapse, and you are almost powerless to change the course. You have done your part. Now you must wait, trust, and keep your face calm. This is the harsh rule of the half hour and what makes it a test. No matter how you feel inside, you must never show it. Not trace. Anxiety about the kitchen, worry about time, fears that something might go wrong before the guests, all must be hidden behind a calm, pleasant face. Not only hidden, you must be the calmest person in the room. When your first guests arrive and gather, you must make them feel welcome, opening light and pleasant topics to ease small social awkwardness. A new book to show them, a delicate trinket to share. Anything that makes the waiting feel comfortable rather than tense. The comfort of the whole evening depends in this moment on your own perfectly poised appearance. It is a silent performance and a generous gift. Because in truth, you have laboured all day for this night, carrying all its weight, feeling every moment when things could go wrong. And the gift you give your guests is that they know nothing of this pressure. You let them enter a warm room and receive a relaxed welcome, never guessing the breath held behind that mask. This is the real labour of the half hour, not doing one specific thing, but lifting it all lightly with a smile. Now, return to my side again, and let us watch her closely as this waiting comes to an end. It is worth explaining what all this careful preparation is really for, because it is easy to mistake it for mere show. Every rule of the dinner hides a simple, honest purpose: to make guests feel happy, to have them step into this manner and immediately feel welcomed, at ease and comfortable. The whole duty of the hosts lies exactly here: to make those at their table comfortable, giving them a night full of pure pleasure and good company. And guests come with the same spirit, hoping to be pleased and to please others. Such an evening is not just food and finery, but a small friendship dressed up in its best clothes. People who meet at such tables often remain friends for life. Many learn things they never knew just by sitting beside a stranger. All the day's hard work flows toward this warm, human purpose. This difficult half hour will pass, ending with the sweetest sound. The door opens and dinner is officially announced. At that moment, every tension in waiting vanishes. The long-awaited guests have arrived. The feared latecomers did not come. The kitchen held firm. The long, anxious suspense, like a breath held, finally releases, and the night that hung uncertain over their heads now unfolds warmly and surely before them. They take their seats in a small but solemn ceremony. The host escorts the lady he most wishes to honour, due to her age, status, or as the least familiar guest, to the table. Others follow in pairs, walking in the order quietly arranged by the hosts. The pale gloves ladies wore during the reception are now taken off as they sit. The meal's main event is about to begin. At each place is a small white card with the guest's name, welcoming each to their carefully assigned proper seat with no moment of confusion. Watch Eleanor finally take her seat. The half hour is behind her now. The hardest part of the day is done, sustained, and completed smoothly, with no guest aware of any hiccups along the way. If you look closely, you can see a faint flicker of release, the quiet relief of an actor who has passed the toughest scene safely. Guests are seated. Candlelight is warm. The first course is being served. This night that began before dawn, that an entire day has been tilted toward, is gathering strength and gently beginning. Pause here for a moment, in this warm room, full of candlelight, at the far side of the day's hardest half hour. The soup was served first, followed by the long, complete pleasure of the dinner. In the candlelight, steam rose gently from the soup's surface. The hostess began passing out bowls from the far end of the long table, handing them one by one, first to the guests on the right side, then to those on the left, until every seat had a soup bowl. Everything was slow and unhurried. Such a lavish dinner should never be rushed. It unfolded like a painting, dish after dish, carrying the evening gently through a long and tender night. Guests chatted and laughed amid delicious food, while the candlelight warmly touched every face around the table. This was the absolute heart of the night, the main event quietly gathering throughout the day, now arrived and ready to be fully enjoyed. Look how smoothly everything runs, and notice that this smoothness is no accident. A table like this is held together by small rules. These do not make the atmosphere stiff, but rather keep it relaxed and pleasant. For example, there is an unspoken understanding. No one asks for seconds of soup or fish, because doing so would make the whole table wait for you to finish before moving on. There are also tiny courtesies. Gentlemen may invite ladies to share a drink, and this small toast brings people closer in joyful attention. Meanwhile, servants move quietly and unobtrusively behind chairs, refilling wine glasses, changing plates and serving dishes in the proper order, making the meal seem to run on its own. Tonight, among them is valet Tom, who moves lightly between seats, almost unnoticed. A sign he's doing his job well. I have always believed that good manners at such a table hold a kind of quiet wisdom. Sometimes we think rules and being at ease are enemies, that freedom means dropping all forms, but here we see the opposite. It is these small rules that make ease possible. Because everyone knows how to act, there is no doubt or worry. The form gently places each person in their proper spot, and within that form, conversation, warmth and pleasure can flow freely. Without form, you do not gain more freedom. You only gain awkwardness and small frictions born of uncertainty. The grammar of the table is the foundation that makes conversation sound like music. Conversation itself is an art, and much of it quietly depends on the hosts. They must keep the talk flowing smoothly, avoid leaving any guest stranded in silence, and ensure topics stay light and enjoyable so everyone can join in. The most valued way to converse at the table is to tell a story or share a small amusing anecdote, or lightly recount a piece of history. This kind of talk pleases everyone without putting anyone above the rest. Sharp wit can impress, but might also hurt or provoke jealousy. Gentle storytelling keeps the whole table in a happy and equal place. People praise many talented talkers by saying that after each dinner, if you listen carefully, you always learn something new from those around you. Perhaps this is the true spirit of such nights, not only having a mouth that can speak well, but also ears eager to listen. And so the dishes kept coming one after another, which is one reason such dinners last so long and remain so enjoyable. They proceed like a solemn procession, new courses replacing old. After delicate, mild fish, heartier dishes appear, special preparations and a large roast cut and served. Seasonal game might follow. Then, as the savoury main course nears its end, dessert arrives, puddings, creams and jellies crafted painstakingly in pantries and kitchens. Every dish has its perfect wine pairing, a little ceremony, and a pause before the next course. Everything moves unhurriedly. This slow pace itself is a luxury, a night fully immersed in fine food and good company, with no one needing to rush anywhere. Time flows warmly until the meal finally winds down. Now the table holds dessert, fruits, and various sweets, along with hand-washing bowls, small basins of clear water to cleanse fingertips. This too holds a certain refinement. The hostess's slightest move sets the tone for all the ladies present. By simply dipping her fingertips into the water, without any extra gesture, others quietly follow. This is a trivial act on its own, but such small acts weave the night together, each done with care. Together they create the feeling of smooth, elegant completeness that a perfect dinner leaves behind. Immediately following comes a moment unique to that era. Guests divide into male and female groups. After enjoying fruit and another round of drinks, the hostess exchanges a look with the other ladies and rises. This is a signal. With her movement, all the ladies rise together and the gentlemen stand as well. The gentleman closest to the door opens it, and the ladies leave in company, leaving the men continuing their talk at the bar. The ladies move to the drawing room, where coffee may be ready, sitting and chatting until a suitably polite amount of time passes before the gentlemen join them. When everyone reunites in the soft light of the drawing room, the night enters its final, gentlest phase. There may be some music, someone playing the piano, singing a song or two. People gather in small groups, sharing the warmth and happiness of a full belly and soft lighting. At more formal occasions, extra guests might arrive especially for this late gathering, having skipped the main dinner, swelling the party as night wears on. On an ordinary evening it is simpler. A warm room, a few close friends, leaving the day's trouble behind to enjoy a peaceful close. Over time this custom has softened. In rougher days, men lingered at the dining table while women left early. Now the dining etiquette is gentler, the separation brief and easy, more like a pause than an exile. Still, the small ceremony of the ladies' departure remains. Ladies rise, gentlemen stand, the door opens, and a quiet procession moves through. We follow the gentlest stream of night into the drawing room to see its final hours before the day ends. Whether guests came or it was just family, evenings at home have a quiet charm all their own, worth savouring as the warmest part of a well-ordered home life. Imagine a family gathered in a bright drawing room after dinner. Ladies work light needlework, no longer a chore but a comforting pastime for wandering minds and relaxed chatter. Perhaps a chessboard is set nearby, ready for chess or backgammon, the tapping of pieces mingling with easy competition. Best of all is a loud reading aloud. This is one of the most delightful pastimes of such evenings, beautiful to imagine. One family member reads aloud from a good book, maybe a novel, a history or a book of poems, while others do needlework or quietly listen by the hearth. Through this, the family gathers in a warm room, hearing the same voice and sharing the best literature together. If the reader is skilled and willing to pause to explain difficult passages or linger on fine parts, the night becomes more than a pleasure. It becomes a silent education shared by all under the same roof. Here lies a kind of intimacy largely lost today. A family immersed for an hour in shared attention. One story, one voice echoing beneath one light. Behind all this gently lies genuine wisdom. People then rightly believed a home should be made the happiest place its members know. If evenings at home are warm, full of little pleasures, the young will love their home more, seeking happiness there instead of restlessly somewhere else. Making the fireside the world's most beloved place for children was seen as one of the best gifts parents could give. These quiet nights, needlework, games and readings are not mere ways to pass the time. They build something daily, a deep, lasting love for home. Every night, no matter how warm, eventually ends and the house begins to crave sleep. If there are guests, a gentle stir grips the house. Carriages are called, cloaks fetched. Warm farewells said at the door, then sudden silence falls, echoing with a faint loneliness after voices fade away. Whether guests stayed or only family spent the night, the conclusion is equally gentle. The younger family members go upstairs early at their usual time, knowing that if they stay up late, they won't rise early in the cold, dark morning. The servants finish their last tasks and end a long day, finally allowed to rest. This is well earned. They are the first to climb the stairs in the morning, finally able to sleep. The order in which a house goes to bed is the same as how it wakes, carefully prescribed. Why is this last small round of check so important? It's worth understanding. Houses like this are always shadowed by the ressort. Imagine every room lit by open flames. Candles stood on tables and mantelpieces, dim hall lights, and each hearth's coal fire, fanned low but still glowing red, not yet dead ash. One candle forgotten unlit, one small spark dropped onto the carpet, could bring disaster to a sleeping house. In a dark country night, quick rescue is impossible. This nightly check is no optional habit. It is a real serious protection of every soul under the roof. The person carrying out this task holds the only candle, bearing the safety of all who sleep. It is the most unnoticed duty of the day, but quietly the most important. Finally, there is the quietest duty of all, performed personally by the master or mistress of the house. Before the last person goes upstairs, someone must walk through every downstairs room to ensure all is safe for the night, that the fires are properly banked or safely burned out, that candles and oil lamps are extinguished, that no glowing embers or forgotten flames lurk to threaten the sleeping house. This is a simple check done in near darkness, candle in hand, room by room, but it is the day's final seal, the last careful kindness in a life filled with care. In the silence of this old house, accompany her on this last round. The rooms are quiet and dim, yet still hold the fading warmth of the evening just past. The drawing room cushions are slightly rumpled, the hearth reduced to a soft red glow. The dining room is now clean and dark where bright candles burned only hours before. She holds a candlestick, the small flame casting flickering shadows on the walls as she slowly moves through the rooms, extinguishing what must be put out, until behind her the house sinks one room at a time into darkness and rest. No servant is still awake, no light remains on, all is safe, all well cared for, all at peace. The day has returned to its starting point. In the cold, dark moments before dawn when we first entered the house, it lay quietly sleeping, waiting to be awakened. And at the end of all these hours, it now returns to that same silence, that same darkness, that same deep rest. The fires that once warmed are out. The carefully prepared food has been eaten. The guests who came have gone. This long day, with all its quiet labours and small kindnesses, is done and folded away. At last she climbs the stairs. She is the last awake in the whole house. Behind her, every room falls into darkness and stillness, well guarded, safe, ready to begin again on the next cold morning. The day is over. The house is quiet. Within a day fully lived, a house safely closed, work well done and rest well earned, lies a great and pure peace. She blows out the last candle. The house falls into darkness. The long day is finally over. All is still and quiet. Time rests peacefully. Before leaving this house tonight, let's take one last moment to pause in this calm. We have followed a simple day here, from the cold and dark hours before dawn, all the way to the night when the final candle is extinguished. If there is anything worth bringing with you into your dreams, it might be this feeling. Life is warm, steady, and beautiful, largely because of those quiet people who never ask for thanks. The maid kneeling to build a fire in the cold, the cook hustling into the warm kingdom, the housekeeper in charge of the keys, the footman moving lightly beside the chairbacks, and the lady who patrols the rooms patiently keeping her accounts. None of them are making grand gestures by worldly standards. They are simply managing a house, living through one ordinary day among countless others. Every soul beneath this roof enjoys comfort thanks to their loyal, humble care. When you quiet down to feel it, there is a gentleness there. Wherever you rest tonight in that warm room, it is the work of many invisible hands, the ones who built it, laid the wiring, and those who keep the world softly turning around you while you sleep. We seldom think of them. Tonight, maybe as you slip into dreams, spare a moment of silent thanks for those guardians of warmth and order. Whether in that old distant house or your life now, if this tender day has touched your heart, I would love to hear from you. If you want, when the next morning light is gentle, leave a few words below about a memorable moment, or or simply share where in the world you listen tonight. When I think of all these stories drifting to so many different faraway places under the night sky, it feels like a quiet kind of wonder. No rush at all. It's okay to wait until morning or never say anything at all. If these slow journeys through old times help you find peace, we warmly invite you to stay on this channel and join us for more like this. We will keep telling quiet stories about ordinary days in all kinds of people from all eras, to a grand castle kitchen, a medieval monastery's quiet room, the streets of an ancient city, or a silent time-worn old farmhouse. Here we grow slowly alongside each gentle night. If in the many nights ahead you want to stop by often and grow with us, it would bring us great joy. Those are things for tomorrow morning. Right now, none of that matters. In this moment, there is only this dark and peaceful house, the last candle just extinguished, and the long day carefully folded behind you. Let your thoughts be still like those quiet rooms. Let warmth wrap around you as it does the sleeping house. You don't need to hold on to anything or do anything more. The fires have been settled, the doors are firmly closed. Everything has been taken care of and all is safe. Now rest. Sweet dreams to you.